Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Crypto Philanthropy, your weekly guide to crypto-powered change. Nick Mikhalevsky, Senior Sales Manager here at The Giving Block, and excited to be joined by my illustrious co-founder, Pietro. Pietro, good to see you again.
It is great to be back, Nick. I was just saying before we started the show, we've been kind of trading off and on, one podcast just me, then one just you. We've been at kind of half strength, but no better time to, I would say, be at full force here. We have an unbelievable backdrop in terms of crypto markets. We are looking at all-time highs, knock on wood, fingers crossed, let's not jinx it. But yeah, super excited to have this episode. This one is particularly exciting because it's going to be a little more crypto native, crypto focused. And why don't you lead us in with the exciting itinerary we have for today?
Yeah, absolutely. Really excited. So we've got a very special guest today. Luke Mulks is the VP of Business Operations at Brave Software, where he spent nearly 9 years pioneering privacy-first technologies across digital advertising, search, and now AI. Brave is and now AI. And of course, Brave is the creator of the privacy-focused Brave browser and Brave search, and the company behind the Basic Attention Token, one of the first practical applications of crypto in consumer internet use. A longtime Brave user, and as a core member of the team, and he's also the host of the Brave Technologist podcast. And Luke leads partnerships and new business lines at Brave. Notably, Brave has supported nonprofit partners, hence, the connection to the Giving Block. And Brave has been a phenomenal supporter of Giving Block nonprofits in the past, donating free ad inventory during peak giving seasons, which really just reinforces its commitment to ethical tech and social impact. So with that, Luke, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah. So I guess, Luke, let's kind of start with kind of the crypto journey, the crypto backstory. How'd you get drawn into the space?
Yeah, so I kind of was first kind of playing around with Bitcoin back in like 2015, 2014, 15-ish. And it was super interesting at the time. I should have bought more, but whatever. I was kind of at a space, I did a bunch of startups like early on, and I was in the media side of things. So I worked for a publishing company for 5 or 6 years. Then I kind of branched out, did my own startups across kind of like a media production and book publishing, et cetera. And then I got into digital advertising and worked for this really interesting company called OAO. We were like in between all of like the big ad tech stacks and then all of the big media companies. And it was right at a time when like the NFL and like a lot of these like Warner Brothers, Comcast, all these guys were starting to kind of take advertising from TV to digital and bringing that over. And we were kind of like the glue that were coming up with solutions on that front. So it's kind of like at this really interesting place where I saw how all the sausage was made and saw Brave, kind of come out. And at the same time too, like, if you think back like 2011 to 2016, it was like, that was when everything proliferated with like programmatic advertising and a lot of the worst privacy, invasion and data collection and all that stuff. Kind of everything that Edward Stone was talking about, like, became commercialized, and I wasn't really feeling great about that either. But then there wasn't really anybody doing anything about it in a meaningful way. And then I saw what Brendan Ike was doing with Brave. He kind of had a really great blog post that's still on our site about how to fix the web, and I read that and was like, okay, I need to talk to these guys. And I told my wife if I ever go back to doing startup again, I'm going to make sure it's with a team that's as fanatical as I am and got funding and all that. And so I kind of started working with them back in beginning of 2016. And they had a Bitcoin payment system that they were like speccing out like for that became the Basic Attention Token and basically like was really interested in getting involved on that side and in kind of having an alternative model. And that's how I kind of fell into it. And it was right when, Vitalik was starting to talk about tokenizing, different use cases for things, and advertising became a natural fit for that.
Yeah, this is that's so much to unpack. I'm really excited to talk about this on the basis of like, I remember those earlier days. Like, I think, well, two things in ad tech. I think we all remember the first time we got a prompt on like Facebook or some other platform where you said the words like dog food, and then you're like, is the phone listening? And then you get an ad and you're like, whoa, this is kind of spooky. So Yeah, I've been conscious of this. I use Brave personally, to be completely honest. It's one of those things you can just do when interacting with the web. That's a value add to kind of keep all the clutter from catching up to you in terms of collection. I did want to ask, because you've done so many different things and you've seen and witnessed so many different transitions of, like, call it Web 2 to Web 3, or like more analog to more digital, or more like you said, TV to online. So you've worn all these hats, you've done different type of operational work. How's your perspective evolved, and like how do you see crypto playing that role now that you're kind of like one of the good guys in terms of advertising and being in a digital ecosystem, but trying to do it in a more conscientious way, let's say?
Yeah, I think the really important part about being kind of at the leading edge of these things is to see like kind of what are the opportunities and goals for what are the immediate benefits that this thing is trying to unlock, right? And on the flip side of that, like where can it go horribly wrong? Like what existing threats could be compounded by this? And it's a tough balance, but if you crack that the right way, you can really kind of like turn people onto something quickly. And I think from where Web3 is kind of rolled in, it has so much untapped potential, and we start to see little slivers of this, and you start to see the bad side of it too. But even on its worst day, you're bringing such a greater level of transparency to accountability and accounting and process that is typically kind of buried away. And I feel like our generations in particular have gone through some major shocks, whether it's like global financial crisis or like global conflicts, or the amount of kind of devastation, bad things we've seen is just it's crazy. So like a lot of that stuff has happened because things have happened in either smoke filled rooms or like in really opaque backroom conditions. And I think that bringing transparency is something that this generation is kind of like, whether we know it or not, been tasked with doing for our greater society. If we don't do it, we're really screwed, right? Like, so I think that being on the front end of that, it's like, okay, well, like knowing the threats and opportunities, and then kind of like how can we make this work and make it easy. And I think that there's always been kind of like, what's really interesting right now, like we just broke 100 million monthly active users last week, and I was working on growth at Brave like in the very beginning, where we were trying to get to 1 million. And so back in that day, a lot of people were like, do people even care about privacy? Like people were posting on social, this whole thing called the privacy paradox was like this theory. And what we're able to do is show that, like, and everybody thought that there was like some trade-off where, okay, you can have privacy, but you're no longer going to have convenience. And we were just like, that's not true. Like you can build convenience. A tech's not impossible. Like, and so like kind of mating convenience is always going to be a scalability thing. And if you're not thinking about both of these things together, then you're gonna fall over, right? And so I think that like a lot of there's no stronger sign of like, okay, you can do things that nobody else is doing than like getting 100 million people to do something, right? Like, and it kind of blows things out of the water, because you can't say that people don't care about their privacy if 100 million people are using your thing. But also like there's a bunch of other benefits you get from having better privacy, like more efficiency, cleaner experience, all that good stuff. And so a lot of that you don't necessarily know in the beginning, but you hope it'll catch up. And you just have to be adaptive. And like I think one thing at Brave that we've really championed is this idea of like user first technology, like building for users, building in the open, being accessible, talking to users. And especially if you're not going to track them, right? Like you got to be able to talk to them and like find out like what they want, and like really get into that lead user cohort, and they'll go and be your army for you. And that's exactly what's kind of happened with us. And so Giving Block's part of that too, right? Like, I mean, like I'm sure we'll get into this later, but like, I think Alex and Pat Duffy were like super eager in the beginning to kind of do something with us, and we're like, yeah, let's do it. Like, let's see what we can do with this thing. So you got to be able to say yes to things a lot, and kind of be willing to take some risks that and see how it goes.
Yeah, and I guess for folks who maybe are a little bit less familiar with Brave, can you kind of just give folks a little bit of like a quick background on the browser, what it is, and how it kind of is a different choice, it's a different option when you're engaging online?
Yeah, so Brave's basically like like I was talking about before, like user first. It started as a browser, right? So like you take Chrome, the Chromium open source code base, we basically like harden it, make it more private, more secure, and then we built it from the perspective of like, okay, we're going to put the user's interest first. So that we're going to protect their privacy. We're not going to let third parties track what they're doing because that relationship between a user and the website is like a first party to first party kind of relationship. So we're going to build the browser to work that way. And we also don't want to know who our users are because like there's a whole thing in like security where, you know, if somebody can get the information, they're going to get it. Right. And so like whether it's the authorities or a hacker or whatever, you know, humans are building software and humans aren't perfect, right? So like what we've designed is like a whole system that can work where one, like we can use like, you know, privacy and encryption to like be able to account for things without having to track an individual user. I can know that, you know, a Pietro or Nick are doing something, they did something without knowing it was actually them that did it. And then the second part is like doing things in the browser on your device instead of having everything be done in our servers where then somebody could come and like give us a national security letter or hack our system and then take your information and then all of a sudden your whole life is exposed to them, which is happening even more every day now than it was when we started. And so like we basically kind of like nobody was doing this. Nobody was doing this in a way that was scalable. And so what we started to do is say, look, like, can we make a kick-ass browser that protects your privacy and that kind of builds for you? And then also like, and this was an area where I kind of came in on a lot of this was like, you know, business and privacy are a lot better off together than apart. You don't need to trade off one for the other. And the digital advertising space had basically psyop the world into thinking, hey, you know, you can't have a free web unless you give all your data away to people you've never heard of and companies and you never know where it goes, et cetera. So like, you know, a lot of this was around kind of like busting myths on like, you know, that business and privacy can't coexist. And we've scaled that up too. So yeah, users can come and use Brave. You know, like one of the best benefits is you get to watch YouTube without ads on mobile in the background. So it's kind of like getting half a premium for free. You know, but also like that's just a trade off of what you get when you put the user first, right? Like you're faster, less battery use, less data consumption, and you know, everything that we do, whether it's the browser, we have a search engine too. It's independent search index that we brought to market a few years ago, where, you know, I think we're doing like 30 billion annual, 20 billion annual queries or something like that's a lot. But it's kind of like a better version of DuckDuckGo. And then we built in AI too. So whether it's AI or search or video calling or whatever, like all of our software is built on these principles of like protecting the user, putting them first, and like, you know, don't collect anything if you can, and if you have to do something, process it and dump it quickly, like, and do it all in the open so people can check your work and call out, you know, stuff, because people are going to mess up, like software, you know, and so you can either build it with your users or build it in the dark. And that's one thing I love about this company is like no matter how big we get, like we get even more firm in our principles and like why we're doing things. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're able to get to the size that we've gotten to.
100%. I love that quote of building with your users, because when I think about crypto broadly, you know, a lot of the underpinnings, these themes of like privacy, decentralization, transparency, like you say, building in the open. Like you said, a lot of the incumbents and traditional players will be like, well, that's impossible, right? Because, you know, there's a huge lift to trying to create these like new novel, like economic primitives or incentives to where like, yeah, maybe you can like collect user data, but then you actually have to compensate me for it instead of just scraping it and accumulating all of the surplus to those centralized actors. Like when you think about those kind of core tenets, decentralization, transparency, privacy, like I want to pull back on the thread of your former answer, which is talking about philanthropy and the giving block. Like, how do you see those kind of aligning or tying together with the broader like crypto philanthropy movement? Because it seems like that same audience that's probably inclined to use Brave is also probably inclined also to donate with the crypto assets that they have in their portfolio, but has that maybe level of discretion of like, I don't want to be necessarily fully open out, you know, in public with this donation. Like, how do you see those two worlds colliding?
Yeah, I think that there's like a couple ways. I mean, like one, like as much as we build products, one of the things that kind of lets us stand out to you is that we're kind of like a mission oriented company, right? Where like our mission is to kind of protect users and to kind of like build alternatives, right? But I think that like that dovetails well with philanthropy because causes are doing the same thing essentially for different causes, right? And it's something we noticed early on. I mean, when we built out it was Brave Payments and then it became Brave Rewards. Like one of the things we wanted to do was like give users a direct line to the creator and to like be able to contribute to those creators. And it's actually one of the things with Giving Block that was really early going was we actually were doing token grants to users as a way to kind of prime the system and show people, hey, you can actually earn from doing this. And we did this with creators too. But with the Giving Block, we're like, well, why couldn't we do this with causes? Like and why couldn't you've got users earning? Why couldn't users just contribute back? Like and they wanted to, and so it was one of those things where like a creator is a creator, but like a cause can also fit in this mold too, and like we can show that like yeah it's like you're kind of like earning with your attention, you can also get back with it too. And so that was something where working with the Giving Block early, it was great because we had like this window. So like if you go back to January-ish 2018, I think like we were basically like introducing the stuff we were doing to market, but we didn't have customers yet. And so like they came in and we started talking and doing like programs and stuff. But I think like we were able to kind of show like one, not only can you contribute to causes with crypto in an easy way, but it isn't limited to us either because Giving Block has always been like good about like making it multi asset supply. I think even with us, like they supported BAT early when it was just like I think Bitcoin was initially one of the first ones and Ethereum came on, and so like it shows that like look, like whether it's dust in your wallet or making something like really strategic as far as like a contribution, you can do that in an easy way here with crypto. And then we added this ability to kind of like and when we launched the ad platform, I think we had like 5 to 10 million monthly active users. So even then it was like not a small peanuts thing. And so like we're kind of like showing the kind of power of bringing these two things together where you can have like distribution and this ability to kind of give back. And I think that one of the nice things about what the Giving Block was doing is that, and this is still the case today, right? Like perception's a huge part of the equation, and whether it's like just initially like kind of people painting crypto users as people wearing hoodies and whatever, now or dealing with like the federal government kind of like trying to mischaracterize crypto users, like you could actually put up numbers and show them with causes where like good, like not only is it impacting the life your financial life as a person individual, but like we're actually helping to benefit causes here that can really use the help. And that cohort of crypto givers is like one that's been growing year over year. And so I think it's a great way to kind of like, bring this to light. And that was an opportunity we had, was that like, look, if you're not giving back either, like, why not? Especially if conditions call for it, like where we had inventory to do something, like let's do something good with it. Like in our management, like in C team, we're all super cool with us doing that. And I think the challenge with us too is that like a browser isn't like everything else, where even if you're a browser with a mission, you've got to stay kind of neutral on the spectrum, right? Like, and so the one thing we really liked about what the Giving Block was doing too is that it was just like, I think it was like a couple hundred causes at first, and then it grew to like thousands, where it was like it wasn't all tinted or leaning one way or another, right? And so having that access to a broad band of like causes to give to, showing that we could do all of this stuff without it becoming some political caricature, right? Like, which is what the big problem is these days with this stuff. It was a super cool mix, and everybody was just very opportunistic with it and like fast to work on it too. So it was kind of a cool combination.
Yeah, I mean that's some really great answer there. And I think the thing that kind of resonated with me, like you said, is we occupy a really fortunate position here between our organizations where you mentioned community and the fact that we're stewards to a wide group of audiences, and we get to play a really important role around philanthropy and technology. And yeah, I think a lot of folks in the nonprofit community are starting to realize just how impactful this community can be, and it's opening up a whole new channel. I guess thinking maybe a little bit more broadly, like kind of taking one step up, trends across crypto and Web3 that are maybe kind of like catching your eye, and especially the ones, that folks in the philanthropy space maybe should take note of, shouldn't miss? Do you find there's maybe some parallels looking downstream?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that are super interesting right now. Here's the double edged part of this is like if what we're doing is scaling, the trends should not matter. The stuff should just be built in, right? Like, and so that's where when I look at stuff like stable coins, like it's really positive to see developments there because what it's going to do to make crypto more accessible to people that don't have the time or like want to deal with the mental energy of trying to understand this stuff. It's going to open up a whole world of contributions on the philanthropy side that have never been accessed before. I think what's really interesting to see now too is if you think back to like November of 2022, kind of when FTX fell, and then all the banking stuff that happened after that, like it was almost like over 1 week you had all these different card processors that were starting to do crypto things that they just like pulled the plug on everything, and all the banks just started to kind of treat it like toxic waste. And like even projects that were banking in the space, there's horror stories that other people have told better than me on like, oh, we couldn't even bank anymore, and then et cetera, right? Like and seeing in I think it was like May or so, it was just like 1 week where there were like probably like 5 or 6 different card processors that just started adding crypto stuff to like cards again. Like that's like a huge. It is all about meeting people where they are, right? Like, and if you can kind of make a beneficial card scenario where whether it's earning Bitcoin or other crypto from doing something with your card or whatever, that's all. If I can load up something with Visa on it into my Starbucks app, I've all of a sudden turned on so much addressable market, right? Like if you can start to make this stuff easier. So the trends I'm looking at are volume based ones that have the potential to crossover. What are things that are kind of breaking out where crypto is added in the background? Like look at Polymarket, like it's destroying like Gallup was just like such a force, right? Like in this election, all of a sudden every news station's talking about Polymarket. Not one of them said crypto once, right? Like in an ideal scenario, everything has market fit like that, where crypto just works in the back behind the scenes. Like nobody's talking about like their TV brand; they're just watching TV. Like it's like that's the kind of stuff we need, and that's one angle where I feel like. Okay, great. We're seeing the right pieces moving there. Legislation on that front's been key. But at the same time, the stuff that kind of like the cultural trends are just like a lot of the same reruns of things that are like just with different outfits on. Basically, it feels like, and I feel like with a lot of things in tech, a lot of the time your biggest barrier is just not getting out of your own way. And I feel like there's just this never ending need to cater to the trading community, and people hate this, but like whatever, like if we don't build things for people that are not in traders or trying to force trading onto people that don't care, you're never going to break out of this bubble. Like, and nobody cares about what your L2 or your L1's doing. Like no one cares. Is this as easy to use as Venmo or not? Like, and otherwise you can cater to crypto natives, and there's a huge donor base there, sure, but like I want to get crypto into the fun runs at your school. Like I want it to be something that that can hit communities that want to give in places where they can't necessarily do that right now. Like those are the big things that I think, and that's where Brave's kind of a little bit different, right? Like not everybody has like the addressable market that we do, or the current scale. Like I'm thinking about this, like we just hit 100 million monthly active users. Well, that's like 0.1 billion, right? Like Chrome is like 3.5 billion, so we have like 3.4 more billion to go, right? Like we're looking at this from a very big perspective of like we want to get the world using us, and if we can bake crypto into that, like perfect, like that's a winning combination.
Yeah, you're speaking my language to a T on the payment side. I mean, we've seen such a tailwind with a lot of the stablecoin related architecture and projects that the payments world is like re-embracing. I think we at Shift4 got started right as FTX was blowing up, so it was like a very difficult time to be saying, hey, we have a new offering for the market, like let's get this going. But I think that's also matured the industry quite a bit, and now that we have that in the rear view, we have a lot of greenfield opportunities and learnings from the past to really make this an experience for everybody. So question here is like, you're a technologist, happens to be title of your pod or the name of your show. But I wanted to give you a chance to talk about AI because I know that is another question that we constantly get asked from customers, nonprofits, individuals. Everybody's trying to wrap their heads around this trend. You see it being like a very non-trivial part of the S&P 500 growth, and everybody I feel like is outsourcing half of the mundane thought processes to ChatGPT or Grok or whatever. But now maybe with Brave, you have AI enabled. I see from my payment seat like agentic payments being a big thing, but I know there's just so many and infinite probably use cases for AI. How do you see privacy, AI, philanthropy? Like, are there any kind of core thoughts you have there? Maybe it was conversations you've had with other technology inclined folks, but would love to get a sense of like what the product looks like within Brave, and then maybe how you see it applied by your 100 million MAUs.
Yeah, that's a great question because AI is kind of one of those things where it seldom happens like this, where you've got like Fortune 1000 companies that have C teams that are mandating that you put it in everything. And there's
Mm-hmm.
like very little actual market fit. And it's also iterating super quickly. And so, like, stuff from 6 months ago, it looks way more obsolete than it is today. But at the same breath, like the stuff today has major shortcomings, right? Like I think like everyone's talking doom and gloom and like, oh, it's going to replace your coders and all this, and it's just a load, right? Like you talk to like VP of IT or DevOps people, and they're like, dude, this stuff just hallucinates like everything else with coding, like, and so there's a lot of like every hype cycle, there's like a lot of like show dancing and weird, hand waving types of hype. And then there's actual like fundamentals that are like major here. And I think like what we're doing is focusing on the latter, right? Where like, where can we build this in to make it super useful for people and do it with like the same principles that we have everywhere else? And I think that we've done a pretty good job of that. Like we were really early to like start adding like AI summaries to search in the top of search engine, but doing it our way. So like we were kind of like one of the first that actually like cited all of the sources and made it so that you could link out and we're focused on like really structured data. Teams like been doing really good work on that. And then last week we actually introduced like this thing called Ask Brave. So like if you go to ask.brave, it's kind of like that summarizer, but a super easy way to access it. And it gives you like media output, all that stuff. Like you could think about like it, as we're people aren't like stopping searches, they're just searching from a different place. And I think that what AI is going to do is kind of like a little bit of that everywhere, where like if it's we don't really know what the use cases are that are going to take off. Everyone's talking about agentic, but it's like half the stuff isn't even useful, like half of it takes longer to actually watch happen than if you were to go do it yourself. I think that there's just still in that phase of it. At the same time, it's like a national security issue and yada yada yada. And like I think for philanthropy, like, okay, if you have a search does great because you put your intent out there. This is kind of this combination of intent and inference, and you could have new opportunities to surface, ways to contribute. If you see a story where there's like an angle on that, where you could have those types of integrations. I think it's going to be like extremely, extremely disruptive to the advertising space. I don't even think that they begin to even understand how much this is just going to rip out a lot of the alphabet soup acronym stuff on the ad tech side. Like it's useless. Like you don't really need a lot of that anymore. Like what you're still going to need is brand advertising, and you're going to have the AI work with advertising to surface the end goal. But like you don't have to have a lot of that gameplay with ads. Ads are kind of like a way to bait and pull people into something. Like if you're in the zone with a prompt or whatever, like the AI is going to do that for you. So like you still need to get your brand out there, and you've got to have a way to buy something or to do a thing. But I think that there's still a huge amount of denial on the publisher side about what's really going to happen here on the advertising side. But I think that this is all opportunity on the philanthropy side, because like there's no better way to connect people. Like you really got an idea like through AI, like of somebody that's in that mindset that wants to do something, and you can show them like, oh God, here's like 50 different charities that are helping, to make this story bad news into good news, that kind of thing. It's still early, but like that's the stuff, or even basic thing. I think what AI is going to do is make a lot of like basic mundane things like easier to just have the AI handle, right? So like oh, I want to like kind of like dollar cost averaging. Maybe I want to just like continuously give to these things. Maybe it'll surface up opportunities like that. Like I don't know. Like there's a lot of rubber still needs to meet the road. But I
Yeah.
think being in the zone, like, and this is where I'm going to harp on this the whole time, but like talking to users is everything, right? And we're kind of like strapping an initiative together where we get these lead users involved more with our, product managers and team because on the agentic side, we need to like figure out, okay, like what do people actually find useful here versus what are like VCs tweeting about, like, and that's kind of the world we're in right now, and a lot of stuff. I mean, you guys are in the space, like a lot of people say a lot of things. A lot of it's not really real. But one of the things that makes us a little bit different is like we actually really care about the real stuff, and to our own detriment sometimes, which is good. But I think there's so many known unknowns with the AI stuff, and like, so many ways for it to go wrong that I think like we're just going to approach it the way we approach it, but still do meaningful work there. And I think like the potential for crypto and the stuff to merge together is like huge, and we're looking into that. But there's a ton of risk too. I mean, like you don't want to give an agent control to everything. Like, and I think that like there's two ways of looking at it. Like one is to think of it as like a barrier, or the other side of that is to think of it as an opportunity. Like people are concerned about a therapist office, like in confidentiality with your prompt. Well, like what if we have isolated conditions where that never leaves that area? That conversation is like dedicated to that space and it never leaves your browser. Well, okay, we're solving problems there. Like that kind of stuff where it's just like making opportunities out of what people think are barriers, and like and it's actually like a good home for it. So anyway, that was a long-winded answer, but I think the AI side is like we're super interested in it. Like we've had AI in the browser since the beginning, basically. Like our ad system used machine learning locally on the client, like back in 2017, 2018. We also had zero knowledge cryptography in the browser from then. Even our ad blocking list, we used like AI to kind of like slim list that stuff and improve it. And so it's always kind of like been a part of Brave. It just never wasn't as popular as it is now. So like sometimes you're a little early to the game with this stuff.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess to wrap things up then, tell us a little bit about maybe what's next, at Brave. And, for everybody that's maybe coming to this conversation thinking, well, all right, some of this sounds really interesting. I want to take a look at this a little bit deeper. How can I jump in? Where's the starting point? You talked about Brave Search. We've talked about Brave Browser. We talked about the AI. Maybe I'm someone that does want to get involved and see what else is out there from a philanthropy standpoint, or even just a way to browse with a little bit more privacy. Just sort of what's next, and where can folks learn more about you?
Yeah, so the best part is you can just go to brave.com, and like the browser's there. There's linked out to search, so search.brave.com, but that's linked out from the website. Ask.brave is like the new thing that we were talking about earlier. This way of kind of like getting AI answers like super easily. We're working on a version 4 roadmap for BAT that is going to play to a lot of the payment side that we were talking about earlier, and a lot of ways that we're thinking about kind of scaling out this model to as we get from hundreds of millions to billions of users, and where BAT will play into there. And I think if you like what we're doing, tell your friends and family about it. If you want to check out the Brave Technologist, you can go to brave.com/podcast. I'm just Luke Mulks at Twitter, but we're also Brave at Twitter and Attention Token at Twitter, and or X or whatever people are calling it these days. But yeah, like I think the best thing to do is to give us a shot. My DMs are open, so our Brendan's, our CEO, like our whole team that are out there, like we want to hear from you all, and don't be shy.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I mean, for the folks out in the crypto community, I know there's a lot of folks that know Brave, but if you're hearing this, we'll put all the relevant links in the show notes, ways to get in touch. We're heading into the busiest part of the giving season, and with markets just the way they are, I think everybody's getting really primed for reaching new levels of philanthropy, and it's just really incredible to see what's sort of taking place, even in the sort of slow months of 2025. We think this year could be one of the biggest on records, but Brave certainly is going to play a role in that. And Luke, we really appreciate you coming on the show and just giving everybody a little bit more of an introduction to you guys and the great work that you guys have done. And we're super pumped to be a partner with you guys. And looking forward to seeing everything that's coming from Brave here in the near future. With that, everybody, thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you next week.